So glad you could join us today. This session will be a look at some compliance FAQ topics and presented by Special Projects Manager Jennifer York.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm glad that I get to be here. As this lovely slide says that Melissa has up, I am based out of Wichita Falls. I was a member of the compliance department for several years and recently transitioned to on-site due to a move with my family. But I am back into doing some compliance training, as you see, just kind of various things, helping out with lease-up files, acquisitions, whatever special project they deem necessary to put me on. One of my favorite things, though, is doing these follow-up calls to new hire training. The reason I like doing these so much is especially with how 2020 was, and Melissa's doing the remote training. I think it's so important to form bonds and form connections with new employees. So I love to be able to present some compliance to you, 30 days after your new hire training. I hope that, as Melissa said, she's going to be reaching out to you in 60 days or at your 60-day mark, making sure everything's good and how you're doing. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out to me or to her. We want that bond. We want to form that relationship so that you feel comfortable asking questions. If we're not the person to ask, we're not going to take over for somebody else, but we'll let you know who to contact and maybe even help you contact that person, facilitate that if need be. So, all right, Melissa, if you're ready to roll, I am ready.
Okay, and just for fun, you guys will have a last-minute view of my picture because I will be updating it in 2021. I'm a little bit older, and my highlights have changed, so that is the last picture you will get of 2021 of Melissa Hahn.
What's very funny about that, guys, is Melissa had a different picture of me for our first webinar, and I about fell out of my chair. I was like, oh, no, we're doing a new picture. So, yeah.
Okay, so I'll send it back to you.
Okay, and are you gonna turn it over to me when?
Yes.
I don't remember when.
Not this one, but after the next one.
Okay, so I know that you all were introduced to Case Manager during the new hire process. This is really not a rhetorical question. I would love to see an answer from everyone. Have you, since you've been on your property, entered a case into Case Manager? So I've got my chat open. Awesome, awesome. I love seeing these yeses. Okay, it looks like at least everyone who's answered has said yes. And I'm going to say Lauren and Joe, you guys are kind of cheating. I'm pretty sure you had entered cases previously. Oh, wait, I saw a no. Who is that?
Yeah, she's got a lease up. Patty's at a lease up. She's at Timber Ridge.
Okay. Okay.
Still getting built, right, Patty?
Okay. All right. Have you been able to take files or take applications yet, Patty, or are you in the really just getting started time frame? Okay.
Prospects still.
Okay. Right. All right. Well, when you get started, I'm totally okay if you have me on speed dial because there's going to be a lot happening. And you will have a lot of great people there helping. But that's interesting. I'm so glad that we got you early on and that you've been able to go through the new hire training before the application process started. So, okay, if you, so everyone except Patty has used Case Manager. So here's the next question. Have you viewed your PFN in Case Manager? How many of you have done that? Do you know how to view your processing control sheet in Case Manager? Okay, good. I'm seeing a couple of yeses. Do you know how to view your property information sheet or the wall in Case Manager? Case Manager does so much more than just push the files. And last but not least, do you know how to view your compliance notes in Case Manager? Your compliance notes are kind of the same information that are at the top of your processing control sheet, like what set-asides, what programs are on your property, how is your property broken down, 50%, 60%, home funds, do you have market units? Okay,
So
I think Melissa.
Jennifer, I'm going to
Go
turn
ahead.
it over to make you presenter, so we'll be seeing your screen then.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
That is fantastic. Yes,
Okay.
I've got Case Manager.
Right. It may be a little change, guys. There we go.
Okay. Oh, I forgot where I was looking. I'm like, wait, I don't see it. Okay.
It's a little adjustment, but I can see your screen. I hope everybody else can see her case. Everybody can see the forest with Case Manager on the top. Great.
Okay, so when you first log in, this is the screen you're coming to. And the first thing we're going to look at is My Cases. So, sorry guys, my mouse does its own thing sometimes. So right here in the middle, My Cases. These are the cases that you have submitted to compliance, they have reviewed, and they have sent back to you. I hope everyone knows that portion of it. I think most people do, because that goes, that's how you get your file reviewed. That's how you get, your PFN or your approvals, everything. So this first step is one that I think everyone may know, the My Cases.
So when the status says reopened, that indicates that there's a PFN that's waiting for an action.
Correct.
Okay.
If you look to the right here on contact time, that shows how long ago it was pushed back to you. We always want to create a sense of urgency with our applicants. People can dawdle and take a crazy amount of time and think that you're just going to wait on them. Well, you know that that's not always what we want to do. We prefer to strike while the fire's hot. Get in there. Let's get these people. We don't want them to lose interest, for one thing. We don't want to lose rent on the property or on the apartment. So this contact time just kind of gives you an idea of how long it's been since they sent it back to you and it's been touched. This one, 0.11, that means just 1/10 basically of a day. These are set in days. Okay, so we are going to pick one of these. Let me look. I looked at one of these earlier and there were some interesting things right here. Highlight your case and then hit select case. Okay, so now we're into the actual case. And if we go to conversation, the tab at the top, conversation, here's all of our PFNs. So those of you who have not viewed your PFN in Case Manager yet, this is where it's at. Let me go back. So I opened this case and I went to here at the top, the conversation tab. And you can see the oldest information is on top. So like the initial PFN, and it's attached right here. You click on the green icon, and it's going to ask you, would you like to download? Just yes, download. And then it's going to be ready for you down here in the bottom left of your screen. And pull that in. There it is. So it's always best practice to have the PFN printed and in the file so that you can be looking at it as you're working with the applicant to come in and do corrections. But if you don't have it, or if you just would like to refer back to it, it's always right here as well as in your email. Another really cool thing, and that's why I picked this specific case, this second entry here, this shows it was sent, TIC was sent for compliance manager review. That's what this second entry means. So that means Amanda, the compliance specialist, reviewed corrections that apparently had been sent, and this documents when it went to the compliance manager for review. The next entry is Amanda, the specialist, needed to send a new PFN, and that's typically because, the compliance manager saw something that they would like to see a little bit more clarification on. And again, download. And down here in the corner, we can open our PFN, our new one. So just a little clarification needed, and they can move on with this. This conversation tab, when you're submitting submitting a file for the very first time through Case Manager, I use this a lot, and I've trained Shermina, who's here at Cascade part-time, to use this for something that after the applicant left, we realized was missing. However, it wasn't crucial to calculating or determining qualification. An example is an application we took last week. The applicant forgot to bring or to make note of 2 of her children's social security numbers. So when she left my office, that was blank on the application. She didn't have those last 4 digits. However, she called me back. I wrote and gave them to me. I wrote them down just on a sticky note. I did not write on her application. And in the conversation, in the case conversation, when the file was submitted, we made note, correct social security numbers are entered in one site. Applicant called back with them. She will fill in on the application with any other corrections needed. So we didn't have to call her back in. We were able to let compliance know, hey, we saw that we did this, but we would like to go ahead and submit the file. So you can use this conversation tab as well. It's not just for your PFNs. The other question we asked was your information sheets. Have you viewed your information sheet in Case Manager? I've clicked on the Docs tab, and it's right here. The green icon again to the right of information sheet in the document library. I have a feeling that as we go along, this document library will continue to expand. I think there will be more documents that are pertinent specific to your property that will be uploaded in here, and it'll just kind of give a central place for everyone to look. But for right now, we've started with the information sheet and compliance notes. So whenever the information sheet changes, compliance is responsible for uploading the most current one. So this should always be the most current information sheet. As you see, this one has 2021 information. So this is absolutely the most current. The next one under document library is the compliance notes. And these are kind of the notes I was referencing that match some of the information at the top of your process and control sheet. And this shows at the top, it kind of shows what property it is, how many units, that kind of stuff. The required forms, these are state-specific rules. So the required forms in Texas, that tenant selection plan, acknowledgement form, special needs form. It gives all of the recertification rules specific to the state. And then sometimes they take it the next step and put them specific to the property. This one they have not updated to specific to this property. I'm just kind of reading through it. No, they have. I'm sorry, I didn't get far enough in the compliance notes. I should read more before I speak. This property has market units, so they've made notes of that and exactly how that applies to this specific property. And then this here, the other notes, goes back to the designations. What is my property made up of? Right here, it will tell you. We're still in that docs, on that docs tab. And if you look, here's your processing control sheet that you uploaded when you submitted the file. And if you ever need to, if you want to go back and review the exact one that you uploaded, you can do that. And again, you're just going to choose download. You don't need to upload it. You know, we're not wanting to upload a new one at this point or delete. We just want to download and view what we've already uploaded. And here it is. And it shows, as I referenced, right across the top here. It's mirroring that information in your compliance notes. The manager has very correctly initialed everything they've included when they submitted this file. Okay, excuse me. I'm getting froggy and I'm really sorry about that.
That was a really helpful overview. Does anybody have any questions?
They've recently added, you know, some of this information, or some of it's been there a little while, but wasn't, I don't feel, highly advertised. That's something Melissa and I had talked about, like, you know, we're not sure who all knows that the information sheet and the compliance notes are here. But
agreed. Yeah.
And my favorite is this conversation tab. To be able to go back and reopen those PFNs, I love it. I absolutely love it. And again, remember that you too can utilize this conversation tab. I like that. I like having that tool. Okay, any other questions that you guys can think of, or any questions at all? I guess no one really asked anything regarding case manager or any of those attachments. Okay, we're going to assume that all is good then.
Okay.
Case manager.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, case manager has done wonders for streamlining the file process. I spoke with someone yesterday who had previously been a manager at one of our properties, left the company, and then returned. And that was one of the first things she said, was how fantastic case manager was for streamlining the process of getting a file to compliance, getting your PFN back, being able to respond back and make sure that they know you've responded with your corrections. So it's a great, great tool, and I want everyone to be able to use it to all of the functions that are there, not just submitting a file, because it is a great tool. Okay, Melissa, if you're ready to switch back over, I don't see any questions on case manager.
Okay. So our next topic. You guys ever come across questions about married applications or applications for married people?
All right. Excuse me. So married couples will always complete one application together. They will all information will be on the one application, and they both will sign pages 4 and 5. So the last page of the application and the resident release. They are still screened separately. So even though they both are on one application, you still run their screenings separately with the combined household income. All household and member income and asset information gets verified. I'm not sure. I don't think I read that yesterday, Melissa. What's that? Does that like say something to you? I'm not getting it. Anyway, and then when an asset has multiple owners, who owns it? When you're dealing with a married couple, it does not matter. We're going to put it, if it has both their names on it, I usually just keep the head of household as the owner on everything that's listed. If it only has one person's name, then you can list it specifically under that one person. Because they are screened separately, a married couple, there are 2 application fees. Even though you're only collecting one application, it is still a $10 fee per adult.
Okay. Yeah, I think those are just some common questions that come up on applications for married people. And, when there are multiple people, do we then verify for everyone? And of course we do. But the situation can be unique depending on the property. So
absolutely,
we just put that in there.
And keep in mind that if 2 people come in and state they're a married couple, they're a married couple. That's something, just to remember, that there's no additional documentation required. If they call each other, boyfriend, girlfriend, okay, girlfriend, whatever. If they state this is my spouse, then it's their spouse. I know that's kind of hard sometimes. I have a couple that live here now that they flip-flopped through the whole application process of sometimes they refer to each other as spouse, and sometimes they refer to each other as boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And I finally had to just step back and say, here's 2 applications. If you're a married couple, fill out one. If you're not a married couple, fill out 2. Like, I literally just stepped back, and because the flip-flopping. And so if they present themselves as a married couple, we go forward as they are a married couple.
So is there any, and just, in this discussion with people that are married versus non-married and exactly how to count them, is it ever come up as an issue when there's common law marriages? Is there any specific thing to know about that as far as how that relates to compliance?
There isn't. No, we have, to my knowledge, nothing has come forward that, where anyone has ever questioned a common law marriage that we treated as a legal marriage or vice versa. They're the ones who are signing and attesting to that everything on their application is true and correct. So they're representing themselves as that. And no, to my knowledge, we have not had any pushback of any kind. Right. Donna just made a good comment that she doesn't think Oklahoma recognizes common law marriage. This is exactly why in compliance, we take a step back and say, if they say they're married, because it does change. It does vary state by state what the state recognizes or when the state recognizes it. Some states will say after 2 years of commingling funds and living together, you are common law. Other states, it may be a 10-year time frame. So again, compliance takes a step back and says if they say they're married, they're married. And again, we've never had a pushback from that in any way.
Okay. Are we ready to go to the next topic?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. All right, guys, here's a tip. Tip affidavits. When someone receives tips in their job, what do they need to state in the self-affidavit? If you are a state that uses pay stubs to verify employment, the supplement to pay stub forms has this exact blurb on it. So you don't have to do a separate self-affidavit. If to verify your applicant's income, you are using a third-party verification, then you would do a separate self-affidavit addressing tips. Either way, we're using the exact same verbiage. They need to state, and they need to only state one of the following sentences. I report all tips, period. Nothing else in addition to that. Number 2, they could say, I receive X amount of dollars per week, month, whatever, plus what is reported to my employer, or in addition to what is reported to my employer. Their third option is I receive X amount of dollars per week, month, and I do not report any of those tips to my employer. Any job that you feel or even have a thought, wait, I feel like that's a tipped position, you must collect this affidavit. There's a lot of jobs that we may not really think about it, but at any hairdresser, if a hairstylist tells you, nope, I don't receive tips, we just know that's not true. They may not receive very many, but a hairstylist receives tips of some kind, a nail tech, obviously a waiter or a waitress, sometimes a busser or service assistant. There's a lot of different titles for that. In other words, other front of the house restaurant employees may be tipped as well, but it may not be in every time. It may not be every restaurant those people are tipped out. A bartender, there's going to be some sort of tips. When we look at the supplement to pay stubs, I will read exactly how it's worded on there, which is so similar. The first option, all tips are reported to my employer and appear on my attached pay stubs. The second option, in addition to the tips that are reported to my employer that appear on my attached pay stubs, I also earn X amount of dollars per week, month, etc. And then the last option, lining up with number 3 on the slide, no tips are reported to my employer. I earn X amount of dollars per week, month, whatever. Make sure if you are using pay stubs and there are tips, that whatever option they check makes sense with what you see on their pay stubs. Same would go for an employment verification and they're writing out their own affidavit. Make sure that what they state makes sense with what the employer has told us. If the verification has the tip section marked yes, and the employer states, $200 a week, and then they want to say, I receive X amount, I receive $500 per week and I don't report any tips. Well, that's going to make me go, wait, so the employer says stuff, so you're going to need to clarify with the employer at that point, where did they get their number versus where the applicant got their number, and make sure that we have the correct information on the tip affidavit. Okay, any questions regarding tips or anything like that? The supplement to pay stubs form versus the self-affidavit. Okay, I don't see anything. We're going to move on, and this next thing is, actually this was Melissa's idea, and this is such a great idea.
I love it when people say that.
Seriously,
it's so rare.
This was fantastic. Compliance does look at your applicant screening. I mean, you know that if you've submitted a file at all, more than likely you've had a question about the credit report. Here is what compliance is looking for, and I'll kind of try to fill in the whys. Most of it is obvious why we're looking for it. But what you need to look for, this is what we're looking for. If there are additional last names listed or last name variances, that'll be kind of at the beginning of the credit report. And typically, the most common is because it is a female who has been divorced. That's the most common, or a married female who her maiden name appears. Those are the most two common. However, it can happen with anyone at all. And you just need to ask, like this says, if a maiden name, it requires an affidavit. If they state it is a previously married name, you're either going to need the WPI divorce affidavit or a divorce decree. The divorce affidavit would be applicable if there are no minor children in the household that are a party to the divorce decree and it's been more than 5 years. If there are minors in the household that are a party to the divorce from that previous married name, then we would have to have the complete divorce decree regardless of how long it had been. This only mentions those two options, if maiden name or previously married name. And we have seen other things, just where, I used my mom's name for a while and then I went back to using my dad's last name. Just random things like that. Whatever they tell you, get it clearly written out in a self-affidavit and submit it with your file. If it's something that you question whether you may need to do more, please feel free to reach out to your compliance manager and ask, this is my interesting, unique situation. Do I need to ask more questions? The other thing we look for are student loans. We're going to address all student loans. Not when are you paying them back or why haven't you paid them back? We're only addressing the student status. If there is a minor, there's a baby in the household that is not a student. It would have to be, like I said, a baby. If there's a very small child in the household that is not a student, obviously that's our student exemption, and that's our biggest concern. That's why we address student loans. Otherwise, we are going to always want an affidavit, and it would need to include the following information. The date that they last attended school. Make sure they include the name of the school last attended, and what is their intent in the next 12 months. If you have those wishy-washy people that say, well, I've thought about going back to school, pin them down. But what is your plan in the next 12 months? If you plan to go back in the next 12 months, we need to talk about that. Otherwise, just get them to lay it on the line what their intent is. Verification of the last date attended could be required based on individual circumstances. And they gave two really good examples of when the verification would certainly be necessary. If the applicant is 18 or 19 years old and there's no other student exemption present in the household. I have this on my property right now. An applicant is just turning 19 and he's the only person in the household. So a verification was very simple in this situation. He just ran home and brought back his diploma from his high school graduation, July of 2020. So we just laid it out, made a copy of it, and very simple. It's not always that easy. Sometimes you do have to address it with the school that they attended, whatever institution they attended. Another time when a verification would definitely be necessary is if the applicant states they did attend school within the current calendar year or within the past 12 months. And most of the time there, we're going to ask you to actually get the contact information of the school so that a verification can be sent. Okay, our next thing that is huge on credit reports that we always look at is mortgages. If you see a mortgage on their credit, and it will clearly state mortgage, you're going to pull out one of those handy Self Affidavits and make sure that they include all of the information addressed here. The address that mortgage is tied to. The reason we're doing that, the reason you have to provide the exact address is that helps us, or helps the folks in compliance see, they can kind of match it up to their previous addresses. Do we have a discrepancy there? We can see a timeline as well. So the address the mortgage is tied to, what happened to the real estate? Was it sold, foreclosed? And what was done with any profits made? If they state, I sold it in 2020 and I made, $2,000. Okay, what did you do with it? They may say it's in my savings account as disclosed on the application. Okay, it's accounted for. Think of it that way. We always need to account for it. If they state it was given away, we would then go into a disposed of asset situation. That is for another day. The next thing that the affidavit must address is when. When is big in tax credit when we're talking about assets because of the disposed of asset rule. As this says, if disposed within the last 2 years, the following is needed. We would need the fair market value from the county assessor and the legal document that was executed to transfer ownership. Settlement statement, deed, whatever that legal document is. And that's, again, where we're going to look at, is there profit? What did they do with that money? And is it, again, a disposed of asset for less or more than fair market value? So a mortgage on the credit, self-affidavit, you need the address, what happened, and when did it happen. The next thing is something that I think we all have pretty down pat. Balances owed to a previous or current landlord. If there's a landlord listed, current or previous, 10 years ago, 10 minutes ago, doesn't matter. If there's a zero balance, nothing is needed. If a current or previous landlord is listed with any amount owed, documentation of the debt paid in full would be required before we could proceed. So that means we would not even, like when you see that, you shouldn't even work the file. You know, you can, if you've already collected pay stubs, if you've already started collecting information, that's great. But until they actually bring you documentation that that debt is paid in full, I just wouldn't spend your time on it. I just wouldn't spend your time on it. And again, this notes that the acceptable documentation can be found in the compliance manual. So these last couple of things are a little bit odd, and honestly, I just pray that they're never on the credit, because these can be actually harder to know what to do with, or what kind of questions do I ask. Recreational loans. Usually if you just ask, hey, what's that for? Oh, I had a boat, but I sold it, or, you know, whatever, you're going to be okay. Move forward. I love how they posted that, or wrote this out. What is it for? Can they park it at the property? So if they state that, and I've had to do this many times when I was in compliance, if they state it's, you know, a 40-foot bass boat, or is there such a thing? Maybe a 20-foot. I don't know. You need to ask, where's it going to be? Because it can't be here. That's one of the biggest reasons for looking at that. It's what we allow to be parked on the properties and not, or not. Timeshares. A timeshare truly is considered an asset. If you see a timeshare on their credit, it's real estate. Go back. Real estate, what all is going to be needed. And the last thing, the government repayments. If they have Social Security, SSI, or VA benefits, we don't need to question anything, because a lot of times if they don't have Social Security, SSI, or a VA benefit, we need to ask the question, why is there a government repayment here? It can be an undisclosed income, like they do have Social Security and they just forgot to write it down or chose not to write it down. You know, there could be undisclosed income. It could be they were the representative payee for someone. And some, you know, I mean, there's lots of odd things it could be. Again, if they do have currently Social Security, SSI, or VA, there is no need to question. If they do not, we need to figure out an explanation. Okay, now's when you're all going to jump in with these fantastic questions. Melissa, I will give it back to you.
Well, I appreciate everyone's time and attention, and thank you, Jennifer. I always learn something every time I get an opportunity to work with you, and this was no exception to that. So thank you so much for your time and everything that you covered with us today. We've recorded this, so hopefully in a few days we can have it available for everyone in ERP. And feel free to email, guys. Feel free to email either myself or Jennifer York with any questions relating to compliance or anything else. We are here and happy to help, and always want to support you and being successful in your roles. So Happy New Year to each of you, and it was great seeing your names and hearing from you, so to speak. All right. Well, you take care. Yeah. You're welcome. You are welcome.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
guys.
Enjoy that 60-degree weather, Wendy.
Right.
Bye, guys.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.